Have you ever noticed that it seems like everyone today is awkward in some way? Not necessarily that everyone has a discernible level of actual anxiety, but I just noticed that it seems like everywhere you meet today, people, particularly young people, I guess I would say people in their 20s and 30s, it seems like everyone has become more socially inept or just insecure. I think it all has to do with the the age of virtual communication and social media. And obviously that's nothing new to bring up for a point, but the standard method of communication between people is texting, and there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but people have become really uncomfortable with phone calls. Back in the day, like in my mother's generation, they would call it, you'd call your friends up every single day, whether you had to make plans or just to chat, or from the most important things to the most trivial things, it didn't matter. Calls were just accepted as the norm. And now people very rarely call, in my experience, from making friends, because everyone's just more comfortable with sending a message. And I understand that completely. I'm not passing judgment, because I definitely go through my own share of phone call related stress and insecurity. Before you hit the call button, you wonder what exactly you're going to say and whether you're going to get tongue-tied or whether you might forget something. And I think it's very helpful to write down ahead of time what you plan to say on a piece of paper and have it in your pocket to take out at a moment's notice. That has been very helpful, in my experience, for speaking smoothly during phone calls without forgetting something important. And I find that the more often you call people, if you practice calling people you wouldn't ordinarily call, you get more familiar with it and less uncomfortable with the idea, if you train yourself to think of it as the norm rather than the exception. Because calls are more personal, and calls give you a chance to actually hear the person's voice and hear their genuine reactions on the spur of the moment. And there's some people may be really good at writing messages that sound, uh, that sound authentic, like they're in the authentic voice of the speaker and with good punctuation and all that. But a lot of people are just not that good at texting, which totally makes sense because it's not as natural a form of communication. And you can sometimes read into the way a message is written and think somebody's annoyed at you or somebody's being terse. And in reality, that's just how the way texting tends to go. So phone calls are so much better in that regard. And I think we need to bring back phone calls. We need to encourage people to communicate on a deeper, more personal level that has been lost to us in many ways. Social media has just made everybody so dependent on virtual connections and these so-called virtual friendships that often don't go anywhere. And it's just really sad. We should bring back the human in people's connections. And just to be perfectly clear, I do text people quite a lot. In fact, that's why when I bought this flip phone, I wanted to make sure that there was a system in place to text people without a lot of inconvenience, which is why I'm glad that it comes with predictive text, because I have plenty of text conversations with people, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. The issue is when it pushes phone calls away completely, and you don't want to have the most fulfilling connections with other people from a distance. Because ideally, conversation should be face-to-face, in person. But if you can't, then the next best thing is a phone call rather than just sending words. And I want to share this with my viewers because I hope I can encourage other people to realize that phone calls are an integral part of, maintaining long-distance connections. And, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, you're not alone if you feel that way. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll feel about it, and the more it'll feel every day rather than something you have to make yourself do. And it's so much more gratifying when you can have phone calls with your friends on a regular basis, not even simply to talk about major events, just to catch up on everyday, joys and frustrations. It's so important. In my own personal life, I can definitely say that the close friendships I have maintained from a distance have benefited a lot from being able to talk one-on-one through phone calls. And that's something I want everyone to have. Nobody should have to feel uncomfortable about having an everyday friendly conversation. So the two important pieces of advice that I want to give are, number one, call people as often as you can so it becomes familiar to you and you get over that anxiety. And number two, write down your thoughts ahead of time on a piece of paper to keep handy for right before you go on the call. So as always, let me know what your thoughts are about this topic, and if you found my video helpful, I'd really appreciate if you give it a like, and I'll see you next time.